Welcome back to the Morning Show here on the Arise News Channel. Reactions are still trailing the Elections Tribunal decision, which last week dismissed the prayers of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar while handing victory to President Muhammadu Buhari. The president himself appears to have moved on, having chaired a session of the Federal Executive Council on the very morning of the verdict, to put it in his own words, in order to deflect attention from the tribunal proceedings. Just like President Buhari, many Nigerians may also have moved on. And that leads to the question of whether or not Nigeria's judiciary really passed the litmus test that was presented by the litany of petitions that arose from the 2019 elections. We shall be devoting some time to now look at this issue with Chief Robert Clark, a lawyer and senior advocate of Nigeria, a man who for the last 50 years has been like a colossus within the Nigerian legal space. Chief Clark, you're welcome to the program. Thank you very much. Well, I recall that the last time you were on this program, the Morning Show, you were skeptical about the possibility of the PDP and former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, winning his case against the APC and the PDP. Now it looks like you were prophetic.
Yeah, I said he had an uphill task. I remember using that exact word. Because looking at the contents of his petition, I believe from my own experience that he has not scaled the hurdle that is required of him. And I've been proved right.
Yeah, but when you look at the ruling itself, in terms of the issues addressed by the tribunal, is there any specific takeaways, either in terms of contribution to our jurisprudence or in terms of issues and the conclusions they reached?
Let us be honest. There's nothing new in this petition that has not been dealt with by the courts. 5 issues were presented by Atiku. On all the 5 issues, except for the server matter, every other issue has been dealt with by the Supreme Court, and there are already standard cases available for any lawyer who wants to deal with these matters. Question of minimum qualification, as always, a plethora of cases are bound on that. Question of a burden of proof, whether that has been discharged or not, has always been part of since 1999. So there's nothing new in this petition that draws my attention to anything, except the server, which is a new phenomenon.
Yes, except the server being a new phenomenon, which of course was the point that not only people involved in the entire petition had something to do with, but it was quite agitating as well for the citizenry, this idea of the INEC server, which leads me to ask you that even if, sir, it were proven that INEC did have a server that was used in the elections, do you think the judiciary would have what it takes to give a ruling against the current president of this country? Because for a lot of people, the results were still just expected, and people felt that even if it were, we would still get the result of President Muhammadu Buhari. What is your take on that?
Well, let me be honest. The judiciary or the tribunal does not create evidence. It deals with evidence that is presented before it. So nobody can say for sure what would be the reaction if there was evidence. Now, going by the standard that we have in Nigeria, judicial precedents, the standard of the judges, I doubt whether in the presence of very strong evidence, whether any tribunal will want to ignore such facts. For instance, the question of his qualification, there was no evidence against him. Rather, he even presented evidence that was used by the tribunal. The petitioner claimed that a certain general, brigadier general, made a public statement about a year ago that they don't have a copy of his certificate in his file. They never presented this gentleman before the tribunal. And therefore, there was no evidence from the petitioner in relation to that. Whereas Buhari himself called on the military, bring my file, my service file. They sent a witness who brought the service file, and in the service file, the tribunal said, look, there is evidence he applied to go to the military college. There is evidence that when he was going, the head of his school recommended him that, yes, Muhammadu has spent 6 years with us. He has sat for his West African School certificate in the following subjects. The results are not available, and we are sure when the results are available, he will pass. So there is evidence before the tribunal. And they can't ignore that. If they had not brought that one, then there will have been no evidence before them. But we lawyers, we deal on facts. We don't joke. The bedrock of our jurisprudence is question of facts. It is when the facts are available that you now use the facts to look for the applicable law that you now hinge the facts. So to us, facts are very sacred.
Well, the ruling by the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal was quite long, quite comprehensive. I mean, some people even thought, they could just have given the summary and give the reasons later, but they kept the entire country at the edge of, the seat for more than 8 hours. But now, after that, the PDP is insisting that they will go to the Supreme Court. Chief, do you see anything different happening at the Supreme Court?
Let me stake my reputation. Reading the judgment, looking at the facts presented before the tribunal, except new facts are produced, which is impossible. I don't see any chance of success. For instance, how do you determine that the president was not qualified? When exhibit before the court presented by the military authorities showed that the minimum required of any candidate has been brought before them, and they've seen it. Against that, there was no other evidence.
But now, sorry, sir, do go on.
No, let me take you up on that.
I was going to say, though, that when it gets to a stage like that where it's going to the Supreme Court, one question is why go so far if no hope of achievement? And I wonder why the case would now be being taken to the Supreme Court if really and truly there are not strong claims that may just be being covered here. I'm not speculating, I'm just actually wondering.
Look, let me put it this way. 75% of APC supporters don't know what is happening in those courtrooms. 75% of PDP supporters don't know what is happening there. Those who know what is happening are the lawyers and the participants themselves. And they will not tell their supporters the truth. You see, elections in Nigeria have been so hyped. Politics has been so hyped since 1999 because it's a winner-take-all. I don't know how to put it. But you see, the problem now is this. Why do politicians allow lawyers to goad them to go to an election appeal? When the simple answer. Politicians have access to easy money. Since 1999, we've never seen it so good. Election period is the harvest time for lawyers. Let's be honest about it. Let any lawyer take me up on it. It's our harvest time. We know our clients have access to easy money. We know that they never sweated to get this money. So, well, it's part of, to say, okay, let's go on appeal, despite and in spite of the fact that we know we're not going to make anything. Because the money is there. And of course, the politics of it is there. Politicians want to be seen, want to be heard, and they want to, there are people to feel, they are being cheated. That is politics. Look at what's happening in England, in UK. Yeah. It's all politics. They are not better than us in the playing of politics. They are even worse on this Brexit matter. Why should, in England, one side says for the past 3 years we can't find a solution, and now you're asking the last man now that you must get a solution within 30 days. It's all politics.
But Chief, to go back to the Atiku case, I mean, given what you have said, will you be recommending to Vice President Atiku Abubakar not to waste his time? Maybe he should just congratulate President Buhari and allow the country to move on and wait till 2023. Or, you know, he can just go ahead and spend money, since it's his money anyway.
As Robert Clark, if I am asked to, advise, independent of my support for anybody, which I don't, I'm not a politician, I don't believe in them, I will gladly give an honest opinion. But if, as Robert Clark, leading a group of maybe 20, 30 lawyers who have never had good briefs in their life, who are looking at this brief, no, let's be honest, as I told you, this is the harvest time for lawyers. They know once in every 4 years, presidential elections will come. Over 20, 30, 50 lawyers are going to sit and eat from. And so if you see a young lawyer who has, and you are denying him the opportunity of going to the Supreme Court, one has to be careful. So as Robert Clark, who is leading a team of lawyers, psychologically, Robert Clark, as a personal distinct, will not take over. It is the lawyer's instinct. And you see, it's unfortunate in Nigeria. But as I said, we know where the source of money is coming from. We believe it's Nigeria's money, so let's all of us chop it. But on this Atiku's case, I will not advise him to go on appeal. I will not.
What do you see this situation doing in terms of peace and stability across the nation? Many had hoped that there would be a dead end to this story at the tribunal, but now it's going to the Supreme Court, which takes the conflict or the tension on for longer. Do you see this? Do you see this maintaining the peace and stability that it's managed to, or do you see an uproar arising from the fact that it's now being taken to that level?
Have you ever asked yourself, this is the 5th presidential election being held under the 1999 Constitution. Buhari contested on 3 occasions and lost. We never had all this hue and cry. Let's be honest. The hyping of 2019 election is so high. The 2007 election was the worst we ever had in Nigeria. Yeah. There was not much hue and cry. Even the international organization supported Buhari that the election was rigged against him. But there were no here. I don't know why politicians now, since 1999 Constitution, Nigeria has been going down the drains in terms of the divisive actions of the politicians. Let's be honest about it. I don't know where this country is going. We have to be very careful. We have ethnic divisions. We have survived that in Nigeria. We have religious divisions. We had survived it. But now it's a combination of all the divisions that are rearing their heads now. And if we are not careful, it will destroy Nigeria. It will.
Well, I mean, Chief, if you look at the petitions, the sitting of the various tribunals, it looks like our judiciary, that the judges are overworked. I mean, the Constitution even gives a deadline of 180 days within which cases can be determined. There are certain suggestions that you have as to how, we can lessen the burden of judges, because in any case, politicians will always take petitions to those tribunals. But we'll take a short break. When we come back, we can discuss that. We'll take a short commercial break now. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the morning show here on the Arise News channel. Still with us in our Lagos studio is Chief Robert Clark, the senior advocate of Nigeria, who has been taking a look at the recent ruling by the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal and the matter between the PDP and the APC and between former Vice President Atiku Abubakar and President Muhammadu Buhari. And Chief, before we went on break, I was asking you that our judges seem to be overworked, underpaid, and they're still operating in the analog age. They've not embraced technology and all that. What kind of reforms, what kind of amendments, changes would you like to see to make their work easier?
For 20 years, that is since the 1999 Constitution, we have discovered that every 2 or 3 years of governance between one election and the other, election matters have taken over virtually all courts, superior courts in the country. The Supreme Court, at the last 2 months' count, was still handling pre-election matters. Not to talk now. Resuming now, they have to start election matter. Some of it, we have to sit down because it is an unnecessary extravagance. Unnecessary. Why should we have a 3 or 4 tier of appeals on an election matter? Why don't we create a constitutional court whereby appeals on election matters will be removed from the normal tier of the judiciary? Once the tribunal sits and does something, an appeal can go to a constitutional court directly. That will be the apex court, so that the normal working of a court will not be affected. Now, tomorrow I'll be in the Court of Appeal. In Lagos, I am going to talk or argue a case that I had filed over 9 years ago. And you will be told, oh, we are busy. There are, political matters. We have directives. We have to give them. That is the position in all courts. The normal jobs of a court no longer, matters in Nigeria. So we have to look at the system, as you say. My advice, the late Abacha was the one who wanted to create the Constitutional Court. It could have been one of the best things that happened in Nigeria. So my advice is that the tribunals are okay as they are. All appeals from the tribunal, instead of going to the Court of Appeal, instead of going to the Supreme Court, will just go directly. Because election petitions are not serious law matters. They are questions of facts. There is not much law in election petition. It's a question of facts. So why do you subject an appeal from tribunal to Court of Appeal to Supreme Court? The Supreme Court is what I just can't understand. When the 1999 Constitution came up, it says only appeals from the Court of Appeal on presidential election goes to the Supreme Court. But for one reason or the other, and I don't blame those who are there now, they inherited it. It was not, but I call it a self-inflicted injury. And they are suffering for it today from what their past, judges did by assuming now that all appeals from the High Court on pre-election matters, from the tribunals on senatorial seats, on this thing, now goes to the Supreme Court. You will now find that there are cases 12 years old still waiting in the Supreme Court to be heard. And so we can't continue in this way. My advice is that we set up a constitutional court.
Okay. That seems like quite a sound and welcoming development. I was just looking through the papers now, and I saw that the acting chief judge of the Federal High Court has also said that we need to seek for more recruitment of Federal High Court judges, and that BOSAN have also come out to state that the court needs to split into specialized divisions as well. What is your take on this report? Do you think that the Federal High Court needs to split into special divisions, and what about the recruitment as well?
Already the Federal High Court has its divisions.
Yeah.
The state high courts have their divisions. That is not the problem. Bringing in more judges does not solve the problem. You have to look at the cause of the problem. Why do we have such massive cases coming up to courts on election matters? We can be able to avoid it by just looking at the system and agree that there are no three-tier appeal ladder again. You only need one. Since it's a question of fact, the law, the applicable law is clear, the facts are clear. Why do you need to go to Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, because you want to be a member of a House of Representatives? It is not fair to
politicizing the law.
Well, Chief, I get the point you made about having a constitutional court, and it's very clear. But this reminds me of something that Festus Keyamo, where he was being screened to be a minister. Something he brought up during his interaction with the Senate. He said something about unbundling the Supreme Court, having maybe Supreme Court in some other parts of the country, so that the apex court in Abuja is not overworked. What do you think about that? Or you think, it's better to just have one Supreme Court, which is the court of last resort?
Let us be honest. The Supreme Court is not being overworked. As I said, the overworking arose from their own, in trying to take over jurisdiction, which they did, from other courts. If they had stayed within the parameters of the 1999 Constitution, they will only be able to only clear the presidential election. And, but now they have almost 200, 300 cases, senatorial cases, House of Representatives cases. The idea is we should have only one Supreme Court. We should not. They can go sitting in different, arena, but there should be one Supreme Court. States can have their own Supreme Court, like in America, but we know their limits. Even though you call them Supreme Court in America, they are not supreme as the Supreme Court. Now, it is not the question of shifting them, sitting. No, reduce their workload. And how do you reduce it? Remove, as I said, all this House of Reps appeal, Senate appeal, take it away from the Supreme Court. Create a final court where, as I said, facts will go there. The law is already settled. There won't be much trouble.
I'm still looking into this case more and more, getting the opinions of a lot of people, and I'm looking at this spread here, and one thing that's stated under the conclusion that it comes to is the petitioners showed the tribunal that the army denied the claims in that affidavit. At this point, it became duty of Buhari to produce the certificate from the army, and he failed to do so. In fact, Buhari never testified at the tribunal. Do you think President Buhari should have been in a place to testify at the tribunal, or do you think this is another one of those political claims that's just looking for reason?
You see, as every lawyer will tell you, if you don't prove your case, I don't need to call my witnesses. It's a stupid lawyer who will put his clients on the box when nothing has been said about them. You see,
yeah.
The PDP says you are not qualified. He says I'm qualified. Okay, he who claims or he who has must prove. Now the only evidence you have is that a general in the army 2 years ago at a press conference said, look, I am in charge of the army, whatever. We do not have this man's certificate. No, for God's sake.
That's the person you should have brought up.
To come and testify on your behalf. Yeah. He never came. And this gentleman says, okay, sent a subpoena to the same army. Send us the file, because everybody has a file in any organization. And there, the tribunal was presented with these facts. Now the Constitution is clear. You don't need to have any certificate. Certificate is not the basis. It's whether you attended, the secondary school. They didn't say you must get a certificate. You must show that you attended, or in the alternative, that your career shows that you have scaled that attendance. And how can a general in the army be said not to have qualification? It's all politics. It's all politics.
But Chief, some Nigerians are saying that, look, part of the problem we have with qualification for office is because the law is not so clear, or the law seems to have been made for a different age and time. and that, perhaps we need to amend the relevant sections of the Constitution to say, for example, that for you to be maybe a president of Nigeria, you must have a minimum of a university degree. And there must be a certificate to show that you are so qualified, rather than secondary school or its equivalent, because the interpretation of that is so nebulous, so open-ended. What do you think?
I quite agree with you. You see, when the Constitution was being written, the IT period has not eaten up us so much. But now, I don't see any young man who will not claim, if he wants to go into politics, of having a minimal university now in Nigeria. But I agree with you, we have to change the law. We are bound by what we have, and most of those who have to change the law are the people who are enjoying from it.
Yeah.
So, they won't do it. They won't do it. They won't do it.
Absolutely.
Well, Chief, before we let you go, before we close this, I would like to, have your take on this big subject of xenophobia in South Africa and the attacks on Nigerians and how the Nigerian government has handled the problem so far.
It is unfortunate that Nigeria, that has spearheaded the South African crusade when we were young men, some of us, they deducted our salaries to pay for the South African fund. We now find that the same country that we fought for, we suffered for, we are the victims in this country. But let us look at it from another angle. The phobia of any kind is bad. Nobody will agree with what the South Africans are doing. It does not stand for morality. It does not stand for decency. It does not stand for any good thing a human being should be attributed to.
Thank you very much, Chief Clark. Thank you very much indeed. On that note, we'll have to bring this segment to a close.
Thank you very much.
It's time now for a short break on the morning show.